Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Fans Phone In, brought to you by the Chronicles of a Gooner in association with The Last Man Standing by loserpool.com. As ever, I am your host, Harry Symeou, and this is the show where we give our listeners the opportunity to have their say on all things Arsenal. For those of you who tuned in last week, welcome back. Big hello to those watching us live on YouTube this evening, and a big hello, of course, to those catching up in the podcast format the next day. So however you're listening, wherever you're listening from, of course, we value your support, and a big thank you to every single one of you. Now, just before we get started, a little bit of housekeeping. This is how you can get involved. All you need to do is go on Twitter to our Chronicles page, which is at Chronicles_AFC. The DMs are open. If you want to jump on the show this evening, all you need to do is send us a DM with your name and your contact number. If you're in the UK, we need a phone number. If you are outside of the UK, we will need a Skype address, though. So that's how you get in touch, and you'll be able to talk about anything Arsenal. We've got lots, of course, to discuss this week, as we always do, as far as Arsenal are concerned. We'll be looking ahead to the UEFA Europa League final in Baku next week. Less than a week to go now before that huge showdown between ourselves and Chelsea. We'll be talking about Henrik Mkhitaryan, I'm sure. Petr Cech and the announcement that he looks set to return to Chelsea. Would you start him in the final? That is the big question. We'll be touching on Raul and Vinay's public address, an interesting interview where I think they cleared up some things anyway, some bits and pieces. And of course, we'll be asking you guys about the summer ahead, who you'd like to see come in and where you think Arsenal need to strengthen. Now, I'm going to start off by pointing you in the direction of a podcast that we released yesterday, which was a UEFA Europa League final preview. And I was joined by David Chidgey of the Chelsea Fancast, a good friend and a well-known radio presenter and a huge Chelsea fan. And he had some great things to say, and it was a great conversation. So do check that out. It is, of course, available now. Right. As I said, that's how you get in touch. All you need to do is DM us at Chronicles_AFC, and we will try and get through as many calls as possible within the next hour. Now, one thing I do have to say is when we do call you, it will be from a private number. So if you have your phone set not to receive calls from a private number, then it's not going to go through. And unfortunately, if we can't get through to you, we're going to have to move on, because we've got so many callers lined up this evening. So many people have displayed an interest in taking part in tonight's show that we don't really have time to hang about. So if I can't get through first time, then I will move on, unfortunately. So my apologies. Right, let's go over to our first caller. Right, let's dial him up now. Here we go. Oh, bear with me 1 second, gents. Just gonna get him all lined up on the line, of course. Here we go. Where we go? There we go. Apologies. Never runs straight forward, does it? That's what happens when you do things live. Here we go. All working now.
Good evening.
Benjamin, welcome to the Chronicles of a Gooner, mate. You're live. What do you want to say?
Yeah. Cock up of the Europa League final.
Go ahead, mate. Share your thoughts. First of all, mate, let us know where you're calling from.
I'm from Johannesburg, South Africa.
Brilliant stuff. Go ahead, Benjamin.
So we're only an hour ahead, as you know.
Yeah, it's not too bad. It's not too bad.
Oh, it's yeah, not too bad. Yeah, I just think that the final is an absolute joke. I think that the club's in a bit of a predicament where it's they're damned if they do and they're damned if they don't with regards to boycotting it. So obviously our goal is to get back into the Champions League, but if we make a statement in Europe by saying, well, stuff you guys, we won't be playing this final because one of our players can't play it for political reasons, we can't get there. And on top of that, I don't know if you saw these photos of these Chelsea fans that have taken an 8-day journey to get there.
Wow.
But I mean, it seems like it's a real. I mean, I hope they've learned their lesson really in this, and trying to, I suppose, give the opportunity to them to host the final. It's really backfired in their faces.
Well, I guess it's all about money, isn't it, Benjamin? It's all about money at the end of the day. Azerbaijan have obviously made a handsome offer, put it on the table for UEFA, and we've seen in recent years that that's what it's all about. I mean, how do you see the final going? What are your thoughts on it? Are Arsenal in prime position to win this, or is it going to be really tough to call?
I think it is a tough one to call. I think Chelsea are in a stage now where they're on the cusp of losing Hazard to Real Madrid. So if he shows up in the final, which I think he will want to do, he could make it tricky for us as he's done in the past. So I think that's my only real concern about Chelsea. Really, is Hazard. Other than that, I mean, we've got two lethal strikers ourselves. So I mean, I'm backing us, of course. I think that we've got probably the better chance of winning it. But I suppose it depends on what Arsenal defense shows up on the day, really.
Absolutely. Ben, in terms of Petr Cech, of course, this story's come out that he will be joining Chelsea in the summer as a technical director. Your feelings on that? Do you think he should start the final?
Well, actually, I made comments about this a while back where I said, I think it was in one of the Europa League games that we'd lost where Cech was in goal. It was away from home, of course. And I said, why are we playing a keeper in a competition that we want to win, who he himself recognizes or realizes that he's at the end of his career? He's not at that level that we need. And I think it was David Seaman who's come out and said, actually, that Leno should play. I'm happy for Cech to go and join Chelsea. I mean, whatever he does at the end of his career is his business, but I really don't think we should be playing him in the final. I think Leno has shown on more than one occasion that he's good enough for the job.
Yeah.
That he's a great player. He's made some incredible saves this season. And if there's anyone that he could put in goal, I think it should be him.
Absolutely. I agree with you. And, even before this story came out, I had my doubts about Petr Cech starting in goal. I always think that in a game like this, you need to pick your strongest team. I think sentiment plays a part here, though, doesn't it, as far as Petr Cech's concerned? We're talking about a Premier League legend. He's about to hang up his gloves. And, you could understand why Emery would have played him, given that obviously he's been in goal throughout this Europa League campaign. But for me, where there was any doubt, this announcement, and I know it's not come from Cech, and I know it's not come from Chelsea or Arsenal, it's obviously leaked out somewhere, but for me, this makes it impossible for him to play. Absolutely.
And I think that, you mentioned sentiment there, but Harry, at the end of 90 minutes, sentiment is gone.
Absolutely.
And if we don't have that trophy in our hands, we're going to be looking at Petr Cech and Emery and shaking our heads and thinking, why did we do what we did, playing you for sentiment? Whereas we could have had a keeper in there that we know and we've seen all season that he's up for it and he's hungry. I mean, Cech, how many Europa League finals has Cech played, or Champions League finals has Cech played? Leno hasn't played any. I think it would make a big statement of belief from Emery and from the club to say, right, you haven't played a Europa League game this season, but we're going to trust you with the final.
Yeah.
And gift it to him.
Absolutely. Great points, Benjamin. Thank you very much for joining me. And thanks for joining us all the way from South Africa, our first caller, international caller. So thank you very much. And for your continued support, of course, mate.
Appreciate it.
Cheers. All the best.
Cheers, Ed. You too. Ciao.
That was Benjamin Dunn calling us all the way from Joburg. Right, let's get on to our next caller. Lots of you to get through, lots of numbers coming in. Let's dial. Oh, here we go. Let's do this. 07. Here we go. Really need to find a better way of doing this. But such is technology these days. I'm only one man.
Hello.
Welcome to the Chronicles of a Gooner, mate. Introduce yourself.
Hi, my name's Charlie. I'm 20 years old and I'm from Surrey.
Welcome, Charlie. How are you doing, mate? And what do you want to say?
Well, I'm very well, thanks. Basically, I just wanted to talk about the upcoming transfer window in the summer. Obviously, most people would have seen the videos that have come out with Vinay and Raul talking about the business. And I find it farcical that the transfer budget is so low for a club of our size still, even though we're kind of having to accept it now. Middle table teams have probably got the same amount of money in terms of £50 million, and those are the figures that have been spoken of so far. But what I would say is I've put together a little sort of sell and buy transfer plan, which I'll just go through briefly if you don't mind.
Yeah, go for it.
So basically, I've put down to sell Mkhitaryan, Mustafi, Jenkinson, El Nene, and Monreal. I'll put down Iwobi as an if, maybe a loan or a buy. I'm not quite sure yet, but I'm figuring I've made an estimation of about 70 million if we can for all those players, plus the 50 million that we might make if we
70 million. That's quite ambitious, isn't it, Charlie?
It is. Yeah, no, I agree, but I think we have to try and get the most out of the players that we're selling. I'm thinking Mkhitaryan and Mufti are probably the players that I would try and get the most out of in terms of money.
Let me ask you a question before you continue, Charlie. A lot of people subscribe to the idea, me included, that Mustafi is one of our most valuable players. But when people ask me why, I kind of get stuck. Why is Mustafi so valuable when all we do is talk about how bad he is from week to week?
Well, that's a good question, actually. And all I can think of is that stupidly and somehow we bought him for £35 million, and we thought it was a bargain at the time. Like it or not, he's a world champion, and that does put a bit of dosh on the asking price, in my opinion.
Yep.
And he is, like it or not, he is a regular starting player at a top club in England, in Premier League, which is probably the best league in the world. So even though, he might be incredibly inconsistent and so frustrating to watch, he is at a very top club, and I think at maybe a slower paced league, for example Serie A, I think he could do better maybe. But for me, he's definitely one that we should try and get the most out of in terms of cash. And I couldn't help but notice that he's got 2 years left on the old contract.
Yep.
And if we got to go by what Vinay said the other day, 2 years, you either sell or you offer a new deal, and I can't see him being offered a new deal.
Okay.
What I would say is, just quickly, in terms of the attacking players the players to come in, it's ambitious, and I've thought about this. I'd love to see Ziyech come in, because he's a self-confessed gooner. If we go by the chat he had with Clive for Ajax a couple of years ago, I think his wage demand wouldn't be too bad, because Ajax, their wage structure is pretty low. I think I've read that before. And I'd much prefer him over someone like Ryan Fraser. I know there's a lot of debate about that. And we're supposedly really interested in him, but for me, he doesn't quite cut it. I want Arsenal. I want players that are going to improve us, not help us. And whilst his stats are pretty good, as our famous Arsenal Chris said on Twitter a few weeks back, Mustafi's had a better season than Van Dijk in terms of stats. So I don't think you can go solely by statistics. And in my opinion, I want to be entertained by players. Like, yes, well, all well and good, setting up chances and scoring goals and things like that. But in my opinion, I want to be entertained, and I think Ziyech's technically a better player, and he's just got more to offer. In terms of centre back, realistically, I've thought of Manolas from Roma.
Okay.
Because I think he's got a £36 million release clause, from what I read. I'd love him Titty, but I think he's just going to be too expensive.
Yep.
And then me personally, I believe we should go back in for a Carrasco, because his experience, he's technically very good. He's quite versatile, and I think to get him out of China, it only costs around 20-25 million from what I read in January, and he's willing to take a wage cut in his wages.
He's desperate to get back into Europe, isn't he? Absolutely desperate.
He is. And just finally, from me, it's a long shot, and I just thought of it. But Dani Alves, I think we should take a punt.
Okay.
Because I've watched quite a bit of European football, and I've seen PSG quite a lot, and also in the Champions League. And for his age, his fitness levels are remarkable. He seems to get up and down the pitch with no problem whatsoever. And even though we've had Lichtstein, who was a similar age when he came in, and obviously that hasn't worked out at all, to be honest. Dani Alves was probably the best right back for about 5 or 6 years minimum. And I think his versatility, he could offer so much, and he wants to come to the Premier League. I believe he said that quite a few times. And,
Interesting.
I think we could get him on a free, maybe. But no, that's just a long punt, to be honest. And with the wages, to get rid of to sell the players that I think we should sell, and the frees, we're freeing up about 960 grand per week in wages.
Yep.
I've figured out. And for the players that I would look to come in, we're looking at about 600 grand per week.
Okay,
wages.
So it would increase our wage bill. Be interesting to see how that develops, Charlie. Thank you so much for joining me, and we'll hope to speak to you again in the very near future.
Cheers. Thank you very much.
All the best, mate. Cheers.
Bye.
That was Charlie from Surrey. Whoops, cut him off a little bit suddenly. I must get better at that. I'm a little bit trigger happy with the button. But we'll get there. We'll get there. Let's get on to the next caller. Looks like we're going overseas on this one. Welcome to the Chronicles of a Gooner, mate. You're live. Introduce yourself.
I kind of forgot this is happening, but I'm Craig Muniz. Yeah.
Where are you calling from, mate?
United States. So
whereabouts?
Massachusetts specifically.
Massachusetts. Lovely.
Massachusetts. Yeah, New England.
Lovely. What do you want to say, mate?
I was wondering, I don't know if you've actually talked about this yet, but what do you think we do if we lose the Europa League final? Obviously it changed up our transfer targets drastically and potentially our transfer budget. I was wondering your thoughts on that.
I think it will affect our transfer budget, and I think Vinay and Raul were quite open about saying in their interview the other day that if we are not in the Champions League, it changes a lot in terms of our transfer targets, because there are players out there who are desperate to play Champions League football, and that would be a condition of them probably wanting to join the club. I think we know that finances aren't what we'd hoped they'd be. And obviously those guys have been pretty vocal in saying that, of course, the fact of being in the Champions League will make a big difference to that. There is a lot more revenue. They've also reassured us that we have a robust, and that was the term they used, a robust business model that would allow us to continue on a Europa League budget, but it's not the way forward. So I think it will affect us. And I think, this might be slightly controversial, but I think if we do lose the Europa League final, then I think halfway through next season, Unai Emery's position may come under scrutiny. What do you think about that?
I agree completely. I think it would also depend on what managers become available as well. Obviously, Allegri is becoming available. We'd have to wait and see who else. But yeah, I think I agree completely. If some better, or not better, but some other high-profile managers become available, I could really see his position having some issues, especially depending on our budget as well. Like if we don't get the right signings, I think he could really struggle in the first half of the season.
Absolutely. Don't disagree with any of that. Lovely. Craig, thank you very much for joining us all the way from the States, our second international caller of the evening, and we'll hope to speak to you again soon.
It's dope.
Cheers, mate.
Later. Thanks for having me.
That was Craig all the way from Massachusetts in the States. He put his number down and then forgot that this was happening. Let's go through some of the chat box comments. Lots of you watching us live on YouTube. Big hello to you guys. Keith says, I think Arsenal fans should be happy if this move for Ryan Fraser happens next week. I've watched him a lot this year and I think he'd be a better option than Zaha. Not sure if I agree with you on that one, Keith. Personally, for me, Ryan Fraser is not the type of player that we should be looking at. I think that we should be looking higher, and I think we should be looking at a higher caliber of player because we are Arsenal Football Club. And I think settling for someone like Ryan Fraser is kind of settling for mediocrity, sorry, in my opinion. And let me know what you think about that in the comments, of course. Let's have a look what else we've got. President Chocolate Brother 357. That's a great screen name. Hoping that Arsenal can win the Europa League final. Arsenal have match winners, natural born leaders, a team of winners, dedicated hard workers. Leno should start ahead of Cech. Oh, I don't know about team of winners. I'd like to think so, but I'm not entirely convinced based on what we've seen in the last few seasons, of course. Right, let's dial up our next caller. Working our way through the list this evening. Let's get caller number, is it 4 on the line? Here we go. All right, let's hit the button.
Hi there, Harry.
Hi there, mate. Welcome to the Chronicles of a Gooner. Introduce yourself.
Oh, yeah, my name's Andrew Armistead from Hinckley.
How you doing, mate?
Andrew the Hinckley Gooner on Twitter.
Lovely. How you doing, mate? You all right?
Yeah, I'm very good, thank you. How are you?
Good. Not too bad. Not too bad. Just chilling out and taking you guys' calls, of course. What do you want to say,
Not doing
mate?
much chilling out at the moment, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
But, well, I mean, from what it's worth, just briefly, I completely changed my mind, really, about the old Baku final situation. I think, well, it's not going to happen, put it that way, but I think we should have boycotted and really, really tried to get Chelsea's buy-in on that. I think I'm looked into a lot of the situation that's going on out there and with the country and so forth, and there's a lot of really, really dark, murky things that's happening over there. And God only knows really what went on really with the UEFA's decision to have the final there in the first place. That doesn't even bear thinking about either as well. But yeah, I really think that we should have taken the moral stance on it with regards to the whole situation with Mkhitaryan, etc. I mean, I personally want Mkhitaryan to hopefully sort of depart over the summer. I don't think he's going to really add us any benefits moving forward. He hasn't had a very good season, but that's by the by. Initially, I thought, well, we should be really, with this match being one of the most important matches I think we've had in God knows how many years, and what it could actually mean. So I think this match is actually more important than the Champions League final was, 13 years ago. With regard to what it means to our club now.
Yeah,
I mean, at that particular time, then it would have been absolutely amazing. Don't get me wrong; it would have been the best night we've ever had as a club. But I think this is more important in what it means.
Absolutely.
And I thought it's initially there's no way we can not play this match because it means that much to us. But I honestly think that we should have boycotted it. But with regards to Cech playing, I just honestly cannot understand why we would play him now. I mean, I've had a few conversations on Twitter and a few debates on it, and I think in any other industry, football is just weird. In any, it's just got its own little world. And in any other industry, if someone was leaving to go to a competitor, in a business, they'd just put him on gardening leave immediately.
Exactly, gardening leave all the way.
I mean, yeah, everyone's saying, "Oh, he's a model professional." Blah, blah. I mean, I've got no doubting about that, but can you honestly trust anyone 100%? I mean, subconsciously, even, going on in his head. I mean, if you think about it logically as well, he's going to be joining them. After the match, he's going to be going over there, and I don't know what his exact title is going to be. Director of football or whatever, but he's going to want to be joining a team that's in the Champions League, isn't he? Rather than leaving a team that's in the Champions League to one that's in the Europa League.
That's right.
It's all going to be going on in his head.
I mean, Andrew, from my perspective, and I said this on yesterday's podcast, I can't get my head around. I agree with you. I don't know why you would play him now. I maybe wouldn't have played him anyway, bearing in mind that I don't think he's the best keeper at our club.
Absolutely.
Number one. But number two, now that this has happened, in my eyes, there is no way you can play him. And when I probably search my soul deeply and think about this properly, I probably agree with those who say that Petr Cech is a good professional and he's not going to throw the ball in his own net or anything like that. But can you imagine the reaction if he made a mistake in this final. Can you imagine the backlash from that?
I know, but he won't care. Though that's the thing. I honestly don't think I honestly think he's a model professional. He won't want to do anything wrong. Obviously, he's going to want to try and do his best in the game, but there's got to be some kind of, like I say, subconscious mental issues going on in his head. Looking at across the field at the players that he's going to be sort of working with from next season onwards, and it's just weird. This is a weird situation, and what really annoyed me, and what I find really unprofessional, is that it was announced when it was.
Well, it was leaked.
There's no way
wasn't it?
Well, was it? I mean, and who leaked it? I mean, do we know? No, it's just still hypothetical.
Well,
no one knows that it's leaked.
Neither club have come out and said anything about it. Petr Cech hasn't said anything about it, so you can only assume that someone somewhere along the line has told the wrong person how to slip of the tongue, and now we're in this situation.
Well, it's just, I think the whole situation is really messed up, and I can't believe he shouldn't be with the team in the training camp at the moment, wherever they are as it stands at the moment. He should just not be there, and it's just a weird, it's a strange situation. I mean, can you imagine as well? I mean, this is again, bit of a strange scenario, but it goes to penalties.
Yeah,
and like the first 8-9 penalties go in, and he's got to take one. I mean, it could happen. You never know.
It could.
Going on to that, who would you choose to take 5 penalties if it went to penalties out of our squad now?
Oh, that is a tough one. Definitely Lacazette. Definitely Lacazette. I'd probably. This might be some surprise to some. I'd probably let Kolasinac take one.
I'll get him to take the last one.
Yeah,
if I'm honest.
Why not?
Yeah, I think it's important to start well. Get your best ones on first. I don't understand people leaving their best penalty.
Yeah, because you might not even get to the last penalty.
Exactly.
So
yeah, you've got to get him in.
I'd go Lacazette. I'd probably go Kolasinac. I'd probably give one to Granit Xhaka. I know a lot of people don't like him, but I think he would just smash it in.
Agreed.
I'd probably give one to Aubameyang, even though I'm a bit iffy on his penalties after that one at Wembley. Probably give one to. I'd give one to Mesut Ozil if he's playing.
Yeah, me too.
And I
think you've chosen all mine. Yeah.
I mean, the last one, I probably would have said Mkhitaryan, but he's not going to play. So,
no.
Tricky one.
It depends whether Monreal's going to be playing. I put a bit of faith in him as well.
Yeah, experienced head. Don't disagree.
I mean, I'd go Aubameyang first, then and then I'd probably go Ozil.
Yep.
Let him earn his money and hopefully his last match. And then I'll go Xhaka. And then, like you said, I'd go Kolasinac last one. I think he's probably got this, I don't know, probably him and Socrates probably got the strongest mental, the warriorness going on about them, if you know what I mean. And I think they'll just literally take the roof and the net off.
Absolutely.
The last one.
Just Andrew, one other thing I wanted to pick your brain on while I've got you on the line. Did you see Raul and Vinay's interview this week, the 2 parts? Have you seen it, first of all?
No, I haven't had a chance yet. I've read all the extracts, though, on Twitter.
Yeah.
And it's just, again, someone summed it up, and I can't sum it up any better. But it was announced that we've got all our plans are in place for the summer transfers, etc. at 4:00. And I think he said it was something like 5:45 emails all come out to all the season ticket holders to renew the season tickets.
Yeah. I mean,
read into that what you want to.
I mean, that. I guess we should be used to that by now. We should know that that's coming as fans.
Exactly. Yeah.
And this time of the season inevitably brings transfer rumors. So when people say, "Oh, they've said this, said that," and now the season ticket renewals come out, I'm kind of a bit like, well, what do you expect? It is the end of the season. The transfer window is going to open, and naturally that's what we're going to be talking about. So for me, that's not really that big of an issue, but I can understand why some people feel it's a bit of a kick in the teeth.
I mean, I mean, what did you actually get out of the conversation? And there's nothing really. I mean,
just briefly, I'll tell you just briefly, because I am going to do a video on this as well. But just briefly, what I got out of this is that Vinay is a fantastic corporate finance man. I've worked in finance in the city, and he's exactly what you'd expect from a managing director sort of person. The way he talks, the way he comes across, he's perfect for that role. Does he know about football? Probably not.
Mm.
But when Raul spoke, I did have a little bit more confidence in him. He sounds like a football man, and I think that he's a very good talker, and I'm hoping that he can persuade some players to come and join us this summer. That's my initial thoughts on that anyway.
Well, I think I think I'll put this on Twitter. So the first signing we should make is the summer. And I don't know when this actually happened, this interview with Dennis Bergkamp, but he's said that the reasons behind him leaving Ajax, he had a disagreement with Overmars, etc.
Yep.
And to cut a long story short, he's looking for his next role and he's looking abroad from his next role, obviously from Holland.
Yep.
And if that's the situation, we've got to get him on board. I mean, seriously. I mean, the knowledge he's got from working with Ajax for several years, and I mean, you're obviously a way into that sort of market immediately.
Absolutely.
I mean, God, could we want anyone better really to work behind the scenes with the club? I mean, it's just
Iceman himself.
If he ever ended up somewhere else, I mean, God, that'd be ridiculous.
It would. Andrew, thank you very much for joining me, mate. I've got to leave it there. I've got a few more calls to get through, but thank you so much, and we'd love to have you on again in the very near future.
Yeah, look forward to it.
Cheers,
Take care.
Mate.
Thanks, Harry. Bye-bye.
All the best. Bye-bye.
And you, bye.
That was Andrew Armistead. Some interesting points there. What do you guys think of the points that Andrew raised? If you're watching on YouTube, let us know in the chat box. Don't forget, if you want to jump on, we are going to try and get through as many calls as we possibly can. You need to DM us at Chronicles_AFC with your name and contact telephone number. If you're contacting us from abroad, we need a Skype address. Right, let's dial caller number 5 or 6. I've lost count. Here we go.
Hey, Harry, how you doing?
How you doing, mate? Welcome to the Chronicles of Aguna. Introduce yourself.
Hey, it's Colin in the building, bro.
How you doing, mate? You all right?
Yeah, I'm good. I watched the interview from Raul, and I can't pronounce the other guy's name for the life of me. But from what I've seen, listen, it's all well and good saying what they were saying, but how many times have we heard this as fans?
True.
True. We've heard this from Ivan Gazidis. Yeah.
Colin, Colin, can I just pause you there just 1 second? We've got a comment in the chat box saying, Colin rant incoming. Love it. Go ahead, mate. Sorry.
I know. I've seen that. Archie Willing, mate.
Go for it, mate. Sorry to cut you up there.
No. It's all right. Listen, we've heard this from Ivan Gazidis before. In fact, I remember an interview he did about a few years ago saying that in fact, I believe his exact words were catalyst for change.
Yep.
Right? We've seen some changes, but what we haven't seen is changes to our transfer policy.
Okay.
It's so far gone, it just does not make sense. Like, because when Unai Emery come in, I know you had your doubts about him, Harry. I know that, but the thing is, how can you expect him to do better with essentially a budget that isn't going to improve the team that much?
I think for me, though, Colin, it wasn't so much, the budget and the players that he brought in. For me, the one thing that I still to this day will say about Unai Emery, despite the fact we get into a Europa League final, despite the fact that we might win a major European trophy, the one thing I can't get my head around is how we are at this stage. And we still don't know what our preferred system is. We still don't know what our best starting 11 is. For half a season, we were playing with 1 striker. Then we started playing with 2. We played with 3 at the back. We played with 4 at the back. And for me, that lack of continuity has been more of a hindrance than it has, a bonus. That's my only thing with Unai. And I totally take your points on board about the transfer budget. It's not enough. And whilst the Cronkies are running the club, the question is, will it ever be enough?
Yeah, and to an extent, you're right about the lack of continuity. You are right. However, I'm not going to say that Unai Emery hasn't done things this season that have made me think, well, why are you doing that?
Yeah.
But there's more positives than negatives, if you get what I mean. Because we were dreadful last year. Absolutely dreadful. The away form was shocking. The tactics were piss poor. The football was boring. People can say, oh, but under Arsene Wenger, we had a clear identity. I'm sorry, what identity is that now? We've not had an identity for 5 years.
Yeah, I guess we did have an identity, but we weren't living up to it. Maybe I guess you could look at it that way.
Yeah, listen. The thing is, what I want from this summer, right? And don't get me wrong. I want to win the Europa League. I do, right? I really, really do, because I've not seen Arsenal win a European trophy in my lifetime, and I've been supporting this football club since 1997, right? So I want them to win that just for that selfish reason alone, right? However, what I want to see in the summer, I want to see action. No words, action. And by that, I mean signing players that are going to improve this team and getting rid of the shit, i.e. Mustafi, yeah? I seen his quotes today, right?
Yep.
Not directly like I've heard some people say, oh, I refuse to leave. Because I've heard some people say that he said refuse to leave. He didn't say that. But thing is, it's not up to him. It's up to the club. If the club think that Mustafi isn't good enough, sell him.
But haven't the club sort of shot themselves in the foot here by paying what they paid for him? And now, of course, as he said today, he's still got 2 years on his contract. So you can say sell him, but and I'm just playing devil's advocate here. I don't disagree with you in the slightest. I completely agree he's not good enough, etc. But aren't we in a situation where players like Mustafi, who are on decent money, a decent contract, and still have 2 years left, unless somebody comes along and we can convince the player, as well, that, yeah, go, and we can convince a club to pay a reasonable amount of money for him. Unless that happens, we're stuck with him, and he's probably happy to sit and run down his contract. And people might find this controversial, but I think that's why Danny Welbeck didn't want to leave in the summer, because he knew he wouldn't get the money that he was going to get at Arsenal, and he was happy to run down the deal.
Exactly. That's the problem, Harry. Honestly, the amount of wages that this club has on bang average players is a joke. And that's held us back for at least 2 seasons.
Yep.
You've got Carl Jenkinson, of all people, on 45,000 a week. What kind of nonsense is that?
No, you're right, mate. You're right. I don't disagree with anyone.
You've got Danny Welbeck on 110 grand a week. Again, what nonsense is that? Act like a big club, for fuck's sake. Seriously.
You're right.
Is there anything that's wrong with what I'm saying here?
No, you're absolutely spot on, mate. You're absolutely spot on. What do you make of this? Is a question for you. Just a final question to wrap it up. What do you think of this link with Ryan Fraser? In your opinion, is he Arsenal quality? Is he at the level that we require or that we want?
To be honest, mate, I don't know. I've not seen much of. Well, I've seen Ryan Fraser. It's not that he's not been good this season, because he has. But is he just one of them players that's peaked this season? Because Because I can't remember many seasons where he's been doing what he's been doing at Bournemouth now on a consistent basis.
Yeah.
That's my worry. I'm not saying if we bought him, I wouldn't get behind him. Of course I would. Of course I would. If we sign any player, like regardless, right, I'll back them 110%, but I want them to be good enough as well. I don't want bang average players at this club anymore. We've had bang average players for far too long. And if Ryan Fraser is another one of those, then, to be honest with you, I'd rather we go after Ziyech.
Yep, I agree with that.
So,
he's shown what he can do in the Champions League, hasn't he?
Yeah, he has. He's been absolutely fantastic in the Champions League. I mean, the less we speak about that dreaded semi-final of a few weeks ago, the better. I mean, they can't win the Champions League, Harry. No, that'll be the end of me.
You know what, Colin? I didn't even want to bring that up. This evening. Just even if we won the Europa League, just to finish off, mate, because I've got to move on. But even if we were to win the Europa League, it would feel a little bit tainted, wouldn't it? If they went on,
it would sour it, wouldn't it?
Oh God, can you imagine? Just a few days later, if they went on and done the unthinkable and won the Champions League. Jesus.
If it happens, Harry, I might well jump off a cliff.
You and me both, mate. Colin, thank you so much, mate. And sorry to cut it short, but I've got a few more calls lined up, which I need to get on to.
Cool, bro. Cool.
And we'll speak again in the near future, mate, I'm sure.
Indeed we will, Harry. See you later.
Cheers, mate. Take care. That was the brilliant Colin. And lots of you who listen to sort of Arsenal podcasts and stuff will probably recognize that voice. Colin is a bit of a celebrity in the podcasting world, and rightly so. He's a very passionate Arsenal fan. And of course, the floor is for you guys here. Feel free to jump on. Like I said, how you do it, you go over to our Twitter page at Chronicles_AFC. You DM us your number. Or your Skype if you're calling from abroad. And yeah, lovely. Right, let's get on to the next caller. Hitting the button now. Here we go.
Good evening.
Good evening, sir. Introduce yourself and let us know where you're calling from, mate.
I'm Melvin from Essex.
How's it going, Melvin? You all right?
Yeah, not too bad, thank you. Colin, I must just before we start, that Colin is terrific. I've seen and heard of him a few times. Passionate, yeah, and he comes out with a lot of sense. Haven't heard of him for a couple of months now, but I'm glad he's back on the scene.
He's brilliant, and I'm sure he'll be on again in the very near future. Melvin, what do you want to say, mate, before I start asking you questions of mine?
Well, first of all, I can't believe that a big club like us tells everybody what their budget is. How can that work? In any respect, it's ridiculous. We don't even know what it is anyway. I don't think even the club knows what it is. So why put these things out? And just to switch a bit, what Colin said about, and yourself, about Ryan Fraser.
Yeah,
he's been doing it for more than one season. I think he tore into us a couple of seasons ago away. He did very well.
I think he did. And I'm not saying he's a bad player, but someone, because I was having this debate with someone on Twitter earlier, and someone else commented, even Stevie Wonder would dance rings around our defense. And it's true, because if you're going to look at it from that point, then you probably say, why don't we go and sign Charlie Austin as well? Because he always scores against us. It's just, for me, he just doesn't excite me. He's not the type of signing that I would be excited by, and I'd want to go and get on the back of my shirt and be buzzing about. And I think that the Arsenal fan base desperately needs someone like that.
I think we can have both. We don't have to. He doesn't have to be that player. I think he's the type of player that would be like an upgrade on Iwobi, because I think he has got the final ball, and I think he can score goals, and he's got the energy. Iwobi's very good with his energy. I give him that work, and he tries 100%. This guy does, but he has got the end result. And if you're talking about either of those players, I know who I'd rather have in the team.
Yeah, that's a fair point. And I think at the beginning of the season, I don't know what you think. At the beginning, I was quite full of praise for Iwobi. I thought he'd improved, but he seems to have regressed a little bit as the season's gone on. And I just think Arsenal have made that mistake of investing far too much time in players like that over the years. And it's time we just cut our losses and moved on from him. I don't know what you think on that.
Definitely, I definitely agree. And I think players that deserve a chance, something like Reece Nelson, I'd like to see come back next season. Not necessarily to start, but to have a little chance for next season.
Yep. No, I agree.
I'd like to see that. And just one other thing to do with the game that's coming up. What would happen if it wasn't our player that couldn't go to the country, but it was one of the managers? What would have happened then?
Yeah, that's a great point. It's a great point. And the thing is, I think this issue has been a little bit, what's the word, misrepresented by some media outlets, I think, because they've gone with the clickbait titles of, Mkhitaryan not allowed to Baku. That's not the case. They have said he can go, but Mkhitaryan has decided that he doesn't want to go, and that's fair enough. He probably feels unsafe, as he said, and if that's the case, then I don't care how much they earn. No footballer should be in a position where they feel unsafe and their family feel unsafe going to a game like that. Number two, he probably feels as though he'll be letting his people down if he sort of bent his principles. And I know, because I've got some Armenian friends, that the conflict between the two countries is very fresh. It's not something that's so in the past that you can ignore it. It is a conflict that's still very much alive. And so I get that. But for me, and as I said on yesterday's podcast, I feel as though UEFA need to do more. If they've said, here's a security plan, and Mkhitaryan still said, I don't feel comfortable, then they need to get back on that drawing board and make it even better, even more secure. What's your take on that, Melvin?
100%, definitely. Put the emphasis on them. They're the ones that, if you like, got everyone in this mess. They should be the ones to get us out.
Absolutely. Melvin, have you seen the Raul and Vinay interviews?
No, I haven't. I've just read bits and pieces about it.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on sort of the new regime and how have you taken to them so far?
Well, to go back, I mean, really, it's not what they say, it's what they do. They can say what they like. Well, let's see what they do, and then I'll make my decision on if they're any good.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I said earlier on in the show, I think that Raul talks a good game. I think Vinay talks a good game for someone who's in sort of the finance world. But ultimately, it's what you said, isn't it? Is it good enough? Is it enough to see us get our transfer targets in? Another thing I want to ask you, Melvin, something that we've mentioned a couple of times now on tonight's show, Petr Cech, would you start him in the final?
100% no way. Absolutely. And I think he'd be under a lot of pressure himself. Professional as he is, at the back of his mind, subconsciously, he'd be thinking, if I do make a mistake, what will people think? Listen, I will never think he's going to throw a game. Don't get me wrong. But in the back of his mind, he plays on his nerves as well as a goalkeeper. He doesn't need the extra pressure.
Yeah, that's right. It is exactly that, isn't it? He'll be under immense pressure. He'll be feeling, an increased sort of pressure in a game like that. And it's not really ideal. I think it's a distraction. On the one hand, though, I do feel a bit sorry for Petr Cech here because it's his last game of his career. He would have liked to have gone out with a win, I'm sure. And like you said, I don't think he'll ever throw a game. I think he's a model professional, but he must be gutted. He must be sitting there thinking, how on earth has this come out? Because he's not said it. Chelsea have not officially said anything. Arsenal have not officially said anything. This is a leak from somewhere. And, can you imagine that this didn't turn out to be true after all of that? And it just feels like his last game of his career, and it's a great career, even if he is a Chelsea legend and not really an Arsenal one. It's a great career, and it's a shame that it's going to end like this. I do feel sorry for him. Do you not?
I do, very much so. And somebody somewhere has let him down big time.
Absolutely. It's not on, is it? Melvin, Thank you so much for joining me, mate. And we'll speak to you again in the near future.
Yeah, thanks, Harry. All the best.
Cheers, mate. All the best. That was the brilliant Melvin Marks, regular listener of the Chronicles of a Gooner podcast. A big thanks to every single one of you that is tuned in live, and to those of you listening back on the recording afterwards. As I said at the top of the show, apologies for any glitches. Always going to happen when we do something like this live, unfortunately. Such is the complexity of what we're doing. And I wish I had maybe if we get some money in one day, we'll get a producer to come and control the phones, taking a little bit of pressure off myself and making things run that little bit smoother. Right, let's get our next caller on the line. Here we go. Good evening. Welcome to the Chronicles of a Gooner, my friend. Introduce yourself.
Hi, Harry. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you, my friend. How are you? What's your name and where are you calling from?
Yeah, hi, hi, Ari. I'm Mayank Bhasin. I'm calling from India.
Whereabouts?
This is a place called Faridabad in a state called Haryana, which is a part of India.
Fantastic, fantastic stuff. Well, thank you for joining us, my friend. What would you like to say?
So obviously, there's a lot of things going around. There's the Europa League final. There's the transfer window coming up. There's obviously the Petr Cech situation. So I mean, yeah, shoot me anything. I can pretty much talk about anything. So anything that suits you.
Fantastic. What are your thoughts going into the Europa League final? Feeling confident?
Yes, I think there's definitely a wave of optimism with the fans as well, and the club, of course. We obviously are coming off a very good win against Valencia in the semi-finals. Then there was the away win against Burnley. So I think the mood is pretty good. Aubameyang's on firing cylinders right now. So that's pretty good for us. He's doing well. Lacazette's doing well. In general, I think obviously it's an all English final, so Chelsea is not going to be the easiest opponent. I think Hazard would be motivated more than anyone in the team to put up the performance of a lifetime and depart from the club with a trophy. So there's that.
Yep, absolutely. What have you made of the whole Henrik Mkhitaryan situation? It's been a big talking point. He said that he doesn't feel safe enough to go. The club have respected his wishes. How do you see this situation? How do you read it?
Well, it's obviously pretty unfortunate for Mickey to not be able to make it not be able to make it to Baku. There's obviously the talk that Ivan Gazidis was on the board, and he was in discussions with UEFA when he was decided, when Baku was decided as the venue for the final. So that's a bit of a shame that he was a part of it, and he maybe didn't think the consequences well beforehand. And it's also come out in the news that even though UEFA might have arranged for his travel, it's just that Hendrik doesn't feel safe to travel, which is a very fair point because the escalations, the tension in the tensions in the two countries, Armenia and Azerbaijan, that obviously can take a huge toll on the player. And I remember, Mickey not facing Karabakh as well when we played against them in the group stage. So it's definitely a sorry situation. But on the other hand, one good news that I think some fans can be happy about is the fact that Danny Welbeck looks to be fit again. Now, match fitness will obviously be a sort of an issue, but we apparently played, I think, a couple of games behind closed doors. So one was, I think, a couple of days back when we won 3-0. I'm not sure what opposition we faced. And apparently we've also had a game played today behind closed doors, which we won 4-0. And this was against an Austrian side, which was in news, I think, yesterday. So I'm not sure of the name exactly, but yeah, we won 4-0 today behind closed doors. And I was just looking, if any of our players, hopefully nobody's picked up an injury or anything. It's just that this sort of match fitness will go a long way.
So would you include Danny Welbeck in the squad for the Europa League final? Do you think a half fit Danny Welbeck is more dangerous, more effective, perhaps, than somebody like Eddie Nketiah?
I think having him in the squad would be a bit of a boost. Now, obviously, there's still about a week to go, so training will happen in in Colney and in the training area at Arsenal. So hopefully, Danny can prove a bit of a point to Emery there, and I genuinely hope that he travels. And if not for the whole length of the game, maybe Danny could feature, say, in the second half, or maybe in the first half, first 45. So I think that will be an added boost because he definitely will bring, some sort of a dynamism. And because I think even Chelsea, wouldn't have been able to see much of Danny Welbeck's play from this season because he got injured so early into the season. So I think, he can be sort of a trump card for us. Not totally, but definitely to an extent.
Yeah, not somebody to rely on, but an extra option. I agree with that. And
absolutely.
And to answer my own question, I would rather have a half-fit Danny Welbeck for the last 10, 15 minutes of a game, for example, than, somebody like an Eddie Nketiah. It's no disrespect to him. I just don't think he's ready. Sorry, mate. Just going to pause you just for a second. Just had a comment come through in the chat from David Moore. Harry, what do you think of Tottenham? The answer is shit. Right.
I think that's what every Arsenal fan would say.
Exactly.
But well, it's that kind of an unfortunate situation. They've reached the CL final. But I think honestly speaking, props to Mauricio Pochettino, man. He's been doing a very solid job with that club, and I honestly feel that if he's poached by another club, I think that's the end of Tottenham if they don't get a suitable replacement. And honestly speaking, because Pochettino is that kind of tactician who, if he goes to say Bayern or Juventus, and he'll do wonders there. I think he will.
Well,
so that's
we recorded the Simply Serie A podcast last night, which is an Italian football podcast. Again, it's a Sofa Sports Media production, and we were talking with some very well-known Italian football writers, and both of them seem to think that Maurizio Pochettino is number one on Juventus's wish list now, having seen Massimiliano Allegri leave. So interesting to see how that story develops, and particularly, and I don't want to talk about it, but if Tottenham did win the Champions League, then maybe Pochettino will feel that that his time at Spurs has come to an end and he can do no more. And I wouldn't be surprised to see him leave in that instance. My friend, have you seen the Raul and Vinay interview? I seem to be asking everyone this, and a lot of people haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, I've watched both the parts, and I was pretty impressed, with both the parts. Now, there's obviously, every Arsenal fan would say, for those who have watched who watched both the parts, they might say that it's the usual thing of somebody from the management coming ahead and saying this or that, and it's just the club's ambition, this or that, and in fact when the transfer window passes, and we'll back to square one. But I honestly think that the way that the the interview was conducted, I was pretty happy with both Vinay and Raul specifically, because he was talking more about the football side of things, and he explained the new structure at Arsenal, with a lot of heads being created. There was talk of women's football as well, which is, I think, a very good sign. Very successful season for our women's football team as well, so that's a plus. And I think in general hindsight, it's more about as far as the transfer market is concerned, it's more about getting the right kind of players in, and not needs the biggest reinforcement is the defense, right? So we definitely need at least one proper big name centre back coming in. The rest could be prospect signings. So there's talk of William Saliba from Saint Etienne. There's talk of Ibrahim Konate from Leipzig in Bundesliga. So these obviously are great signings. I mean, Leipzig from I think Konate is, I think, a bit of an exception, because he's becoming such a tremendous player with each and every passing game, and he's been likened to Van Dijk and guys like Varane and everybody. So I think I think he's on the radar of a lot of clubs. So honestly speaking, even if Arsenal is interested, I still don't see the signing of Konate very realistic. However, I think we've been very strongly linked to William Saliba, so I think that could happen. Mario Hermoso from RCD Espanyol, I think, is one of my favorite defenders. I think we've been linked with. He's got a year left on his contract, so any club that wants to, and for him, they've got a pretty good negotiation position from the point of view of transfer. I mean, if he comes in, he's slotting in straight into the first team. No doubt about that. He's turning 24, I think, pretty soon, and he's developing really well at Espanyol. And I mean, if he comes to a club like Arsenal where defense is, I mean, it's basically shattered at this moment. Especially when you take away the fact that there's no Rob Holding at this point in time. Will be there by when the next season starts, but we've sorely missed Hector Bellerin and Rob Holding so much this season. I mean, I generally think we would have considered lesser goals, and probably won games. Some of the games that we ended up losing had Rob Holding and Bellerin been there. And I think that is one of the reasons why we missed out on top four as well.
One thing I would say, mate, just to round off there, a lot of people talk about the fact that we've missed those players, and whilst I agree that we have missed them, and of course you lose two defenders that are in the first team for that period of time, it's going to have an effect. It's going to take its toll on any side. My kind of issue with that is that Rob Holding, for me, is still a young defender. He's still not earned his stripes for me. He's still not proven over a long enough period of time that he is good enough to be an Arsenal starting centre-back. That's just my view on it. I think he's done well. I think he's improved in the time he's been with us. But I still don't look at him and say, yes, he's a top-class centre-back. And I don't feel that his absence should have been enough to derail our season. That's just my view on it. I know it's not a popular opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think it was so more down to the fact that whenever when in preseason, Rob might have definitely impressed Emery, which is why he was given a lot of game time initially, and up until the point in the season where we had seen Rob, so about I think 1.5 to 2 months of it. So what we were saying was that Rob was he was getting better with each game. He's a ball playing center back, and he was playing as sort of the sweeper along the back line. And he was, I think, in my opinion, according to what I was able to gather when I was watching the matches on the TV, that he was getting comfortable with each and every passing game. That is why I think when the injury happened, that I think is the sort of the tipping point where our crisis began. Not a crisis by total means, because we definitely had the names in our defense to kind of take the game forward. But then there's guys like Mustafi who have just not justified their worth to the team in the 3 years that they've been here. And then there's obviously the talk that I think he said in one of his interviews today that he has a contract till 2021 to honor. But I think Arsenal have to try and convince him to
move,
let go.
Get going.
Yeah, I think honestly if he ends up going to the La Liga, or I think not the Bundesliga, maybe in the La Liga or the Serie A, I think he'll actually do well there. I just have this feeling that he'll maybe do well in Italy or Spain, because he has experience there, has played with Sampdoria before, and obviously he played for Valencia when we snapped him up from there. But yeah, it's not been a very smooth ride from there, is it?
That's right, my friend. We're going to have to leave it there. We are running out of time. Yeah. What time is it in India now? Because it must be very late.
Yeah, it's actually 2:30 in the morning over here.
Wow, you better get yourself off to bed, mate. Do you know what? This week and last week, my final callers have both been from India, and I'm astonished at how late you guys have stayed up just to take part. So for that, I am very, very grateful, and we'll hope to speak to you again in the near future.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, man. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Harry, for the opportunity.
Take care, mate. All the best.
Thank you, man. Good night. Take care.
Wow. Another call from India. And I take my hat off to those guys. It's 2:30 in the morning there. It's 10 p.m. here. I thought that was late. Big thank you to those guys for dialing in. And a thank you to everybody who's dialed in this evening. There are a few points in the here we go, in the chat box. Let me just address those before we wrap up. Of course, a big thank you to all of those of you who are in the chat box. Thanks to those of you who are listening to this later on. Question coming in from the Mr. Arsenal podcast. It is a great podcast. Do check it out as well. If you click on them in the live chat, you'll find the link to their channel there. He says, what are your thoughts on the Steve Bold rumors? If I'm completely honest, I don't know what the fuck Steve Bold does. People talk about him being involved in the defense. I don't think that's the case. And if it is, then he's not good enough and he needs to be moved on. I did meet Steve Bold a few months back now when I went and watched the under-23s. And, Steve Bold seems a nice guy and all that, but is he doing the business? Can you see him staying as part of Unai Emery's team? I can't, if I'm being honest. I think it's one of those things where he was left in his position to manage the transition between the old and the new. But that's really about it. Big thank you to all of you for your lovely comments. And what I will say, guys, is if you could do me a favor. Now, this is a show that is new. This is the third one we've done, and I know there have been a few hiccups with the technology at the very beginning. I forgot to connect the wire when I was trying to make the first call. So all sorts of things going wrong, but I think this one's gone much more smoothly than the last one, and I think as weeks go by, they'll get better and better. I'd like to hear your feedback on the show in the comments section below, because to me it's really important to hear what you guys think of it. If you guys like it, we'll carry on. If you don't like it, we'll stop it. I think it's great. I really enjoy interacting with you guys live and giving you guys the opportunity to take part in a podcast that you have shown immense support to. So a big thank you to every single one of you. Please leave your comments in the comment section, not in the live chat box. Leave them in the comment section so that I can have a little read later on. Any feedback is much appreciated, and I'll do my best to improve it as the weeks go by. Don't forget to subscribe, like, you know what you got to do. And if you prefer to listen to us on audio only, we are available on all the usual podcast stores. That's iTunes, SoundCloud, Acast, Spotify, etc. Fingers crossed we win the Europa League. And a quick announcement: joining me the morning after the Europa League final to review the game will be none other than an Arsenal legend and former left back Nigel Winterburn. He'll be with me reviewing that match. So massive guest, and really looking forward to talking to Nigel again for the second time this season. So do stay tuned for that. And until next week, guys, stay tuned for more information on our Twitter feed as to when we'll next be doing one of these. But until then, take care. All the best.